Were you given your rights at the beginning of the interview?
No, sir, I was not. Okay. DPS employees having knowledge of the alleged incident or information related thereto shall be required to provide a recorded statement.
The question is, were all people that had knowledge of this incident required to give a statement?
No, sir.
My question is, was Colonel Mike Edmondson required to give a statement?
No, sir, it was not.
On the 21st, were you given your administrative rights?
No, sir. They specifically asked a specific question, which at that point in time, I pretty much understood what was about to happen. And
But tell the commission what you understood. What did you think was happening when these two folks were questioning you? What's going through your mind, Rodney? You think this is good?
Well, I just read an article in the paper that pretty much said that I was going to be under investigation and I was probably going to be disciplined. The questions they were asking were very specific questions that could not be directly answered, that seemed to cover that fact up, to help protect him. Like, were you ordered to go to Las Vegas? Well, I mean, that's not a direct question you can answer. I mean, it's not a, I mean, no one sit there and said, you will go to Las Vegas, this will happen. I mean, it's not an ordered question. In the way they were asking them, you pretty much got the feeling that this is, we were going to be the scapegoats. This was it. This was going to fall on us.
Did you feel as if you were on the defensive?
I felt that this was an interrogation to discover the evidence, to find what they needed to find, to put this on us. And at that point in time, I knew that that was probably what was going to happen. Now I'm listening to my colonel pretty much lie and say he pretty much had no knowledge of us going on this trip or anything.
Was your level of anxiety heightened in the second day, sir?
It was heightened throughout. It was, we were all scared. I was scared. I was like, I can't keep, a lie was just told. We didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. You don't know who's going to be, what this colonel is going to say, what am I going to say, and then how's this colonel going to respond to what I say? He's the ultimate authority. He controls everything in our lives. And at that point in time, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm just doing the best I can to weigh this out, to weigh the situation out, when if I say something about another colonel who did have knowledge of everything, who knew what was going on, and now he reads everything and he sees it, and it's like, well, now why'd you throw me under the bus? And now I'm fearful that we're going to be retaliated against because of all of this, because of this line of questioning.
When you first read your rights?
I went to questioning the first time I ever went to questioning.
That was in March, more than a month later, was that right?
Yes, sir. It says, if accommodations cannot be obtained within rates authorized, justification explaining why less expensive accommodations cannot be found must accompany the request for exception. The way it was designed, or the way it worked during the administration and me traveling with the colonels quite frequently and quite often throughout, is we would book the lodging, and if the lodging was over the state authorized rate, generally we would receive an email from Management and Finance, and in that email from Management and Finance, it would request or require you to explain why you had overages, and you did that, and you sent it back to them and waited for a response. And that's how we did things.
All right. And did that occur, did you follow that same practice in this case?
I did. I received an email from Candy Diaz asking about the hotel overages. I provide justification for them, and I never heard anything back.
And is that the email that you received from Ms. Diaz?
Yes, sir, it is.
And she's with Management and Finance?
Yes, sir, she is. I copied my captain and then also her bosses on it as well.
Okay. And was that your effort to comply with the provision that allows for some overages to be approved if there's justification for it?
Yes, sir.
Did you submit the justification?
Yes, sir, I did.
Was it approved?
I never heard back from anybody. It was approved by my supervisor. It was approved by them. I never heard back. They said that if it didn't require justification, they would send me something for reimbursement.
And did you ever receive something that you had to reimburse?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay. So did you comply with this rule?
I did, yes, sir.
And it doesn't say anything like if you don't fill out this form right, you're gonna, take a $10,000 hit for the rest of your life?
No, sir.
Did you knowingly or intentionally falsify your 1382?
No, sir, we never did, and we were never cited for that. As all cases shall be completed within the time allowed by Louisiana Revised Statute 40-25-31, that's the Police Officer's Bill of Rights.
If the investigation in this matter started on February 18th, when it was announced by the Colonel Edmondson, was it completed timely, sir?
It would not have been, no, sir.
If it,
A commissioned officer shall not obey any order which he knows or should have known to have been, would require him to commit an illegal act.
did you receive any orders, instructions that would have required you to commit an illegal act?
No, sir, I did not.
Now, the Colonel included in his testimony information about, a reference to ethics. Were you in conjunction with this trip investigated for a number of months by the Ethics Commission?
Yes, sir, it was about a year-long investigation. They questioned me and others on much of the documents that are here today, the timesheets, the expense account sheets, everything most of everything has been produced here today.
And were you exonerated by that investigation, sir?
Yes, sir, at the conclusion of their investigation, they found that Colonel Edmondson obviously knew about the trip, approved the trip. All of our overtime requests and any request that we had was approved by all of our supervisors.
It's 13 now, my number.
Yes.
I'm gonna show you exhibit, I'm gonna mark as appellate number 13. Is that the decision from the Ethics Commission, sir?
It says, the investigation further revealed that you were instructed by former LSP Superintendent Colonel Mike Edmondson to travel to San Diego using the northern route with stops at the Grand Canyon and Las Vegas. Colonel Edmondson was aware of and approved your stops along the northern route. It was also revealed that your superiors within LSP approved your reimbursements and overtime requests. Based on the totality of circumstances, the board has concluded and instructed me to inform you that the board has instructed the staff to close the file. Yes, sir. I think what's important to go back to or to understand and realize is our position, or my position at the time. And when you're the colonel's staff, you're expected to do a number of things. And I think that played into a part of going on the trip when he asked. It wasn't asked question, do you want to go to the IACP conference? And I said, yes, sir, I do. And if you do go, you will have to drive. Well, I don't question that because my colonel just asked me to do something. And maybe that's my fault for not wanting to be the no man. I knew what my role was. My role was always to be somewhat of a driver to both Colonel Dupuy and Colonel Edmondson. And that's what I did.
Well, let me ask you this. You were told to drive to California, right?
Yes, sir.
Did you consider that to be an unlawful order?
And no, sir, I did not.
Were you excited about driving to California or not?
I really wasn't excited about driving anywhere, especially that long of a distance. Because at the time, it was just, to my knowledge, I was the only one that was discussed or knew about it. But as the trip progressed, or as things progressed, I later learned that Captain Greg Raffey was supposed to be in the vehicle, and then he wasn't. And then Lieutenant Colonel Jason Starnes was supposed to be in the vehicle, and then he wasn't. And then it kept changing and it kept evolving. So I didn't know who was going to be in this vehicle as we kept getting closer and closer. Then I learned later on it was Darrell Williams, and then later on Thurman Miller. So the
Were those your choices or were those instructions you received?
Those were instructions I was receiving during the time.
It seems to me in the questioning from the legal office of the state police, the questions were designed that you failed to properly plan this trip. Could you plan the trip as it evolved?
It kept evolving and it kept changing. My mission statements kept changing as to who was going to be in the vehicle, what we were going to be doing. When it came down to it, I asked several times Colonel Dupuy the route to take and what to go. And He did say you should drive straight through. That was only one thing he said. He did suggest taking I-10. He did suggest stopping at certain stops along I-10. And when we told this plan to Colonel Edmondson, he said, whatever you do, don't take I-10. Into my colonels, I was listening to the advice of them. I know during that morning that there was no doubt that they all knew what was going to take place, where we were going, what we were doing.
Rodney, Colonel Reeves made a big point that Darrell Williams was a major, you were a lieutenant, he had more order, and he should have been calling the shots. Who was getting orders directly from the colonel? Was it you or Darrell Williams?
It was me. Darrell Williams was not getting any information from the command staff, because I served with the command. I was their guy at the time.
That's changed, that.
Yes, sir. Through phone calls, through text message and emails, and responding to them, both Colonel Edmondson and Colonel Dupuy were getting all of these. They would call every day, want to know where we were staying, what we were doing, where we planned on going next. It was always a constant contact with all of them.
One email says Grand Canyon.
Yes, sir.
Did y'all ever conceal any portion of your trip out there from the command staff?
We never concealed it from the general public either. It was always open. I think we were posting Facebook posts at the time.
Colonel Edmondson have a comment about that?
He did.
And what was it?
He had called me in Las Vegas, asked me where I was staying. I told him we were at the Palazzo. He then said, he didn't question about the posting of the stuff on Facebook, about my wife's post, and he requested that we don't do that. Department head or his designee has the authority to approve actual costs for routine lodging provisions on a case-by-case basis.
And is that what you referred to earlier under the Edmondson administration that y'all routinely did?
Yes, under Colonel Dupuy, who was the department head, that's how we handled business.
Okay. And that's changed now?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, after you interacted with Candy Diaz and so forth and submitted everything to you, they did approve the overage, didn't they not?
Well, that and our credit card statements, that does show the overage on it. That's sent electronically to our supervisors when we sign off on them.
Right. Did you attend any of the exposed convention that day?
Yes, sir. A small part of it. I was late getting to the convention. That was due to a poor planning on my part, gross miscalculation of time, losing track of time as far as the time change. Thought it would be a lot quicker to get from the location we were at to there. And I'll be honest with you, there's no excusable thing that can be said about that, sir. I heard Colonel Edmondson tell Major Williams that he was to go play golf with the Motorola people and to talk to them about their camera system or something they were trying to introduce.
I want to take you to Monday, and of course, one of the charges, the charge against you is relates to going to the zoo. Did you go to the zoo?
Yes, sir, I did.
And how long? And then did you go to down the coast and look at the coastline after you left the zoo?
We did. We went to La Jolla and then came back.
Who did?
It was me, my wife, Lieutenant Colonel Starnes, and his fiance.
Lieutenant Colonel Storms is a member of the command staff?
He is, yes, sir. He said, I want to go, it was near the end of the day, and he wanted to go do something. He said, I ain't getting anything since I've been here, because the day was over with. At that time, we had done what the Colonel had asked us to do, which was go to one vendor exhibit. And I said, do you need me to get the car? He said, no, we'll just Uber. I said,
Did the department ever tell you, Rodney, you need to reimburse us X number of dollars?
no, sir, they did not.
Of getting to look at the report before you write your response.
Yes, sir, I was, which I found odd, and I was at a crawfish boil for the troopers at the Capitol. It was, I believe the Haney's put it on the crawfish boil for the troopers. And at this crawfish boil, Colonel Reeves approached me and said, Ronnie, I'm gonna give you a copy of the report. And I said, Colonel, I don't know if you can do that. And he said, no, I'm gonna give you a copy of the report, Rodney. And I said, okay. And then when it came time to receive a copy of the report, once I received my letter, I sent an email to him saying, hey, Colonel, as discussed, you said you was gonna give me a copy of the report so I can write a response. He then had Major Flincham call me from IA and tell me that I could not receive a copy of the report.
And you also talked to Colonel Reeves about the possibility of speaking with him personally and making a presentation in person.
Yes, sir, we did that, and this was my opportunity to tell the Colonel everything, to apologize, to do those certain things. It was Darrell Williams and I were in the hallway right outside of his office, and we ran into him, and we both requested a meeting at the same time. He said, Colonel, we'd like to meet with you to talk to you about this stuff. And he said, Rodney, I promise you, before I make a final decision, I'll sit down and meet with y'all.
Well, Colonel, one of the things that disappointed me a little bit about the Colonel's testimony the other day, other than I thought it was pretty good, but one of the things that disappointed me is he said you never did apologize to him or show remorse. If you had an opportunity, was that one of the reasons you wanted to meet with him, sir? To explain to him where you were coming from about all of this and what instructions you were operating under?
Yes, sir, that was the main reason why I wanted to speak with him on it.
Did he speak with you?
No, sir, he didn't. We got our final letters, and that was, we were demoted. And at that time, I talked to Darrell Williams, and Darrell said, I'm calling him. I said, look, he's not gonna meet with us, it's too late now. So, no, I mean, he said he would meet with us, I'm calling him about it. And then that's when he made a phone call to him.
Yeah, well, Darrell told us about that. Colonel Reeves made a big point of the fact, Rodney, that you submitted you emailed your expense statements to Thurman and to Darrell. Would you tell me, sir, or tell this commission how that came about, why you did that, and what was the precursor to doing that? When y'all got back to Baton Rouge, did y'all get together and try and put together a reconciliation of what time you had right then?
No, sir, we didn't. It's common practice for all troopers that go on a group trip or whatever to share their expense accounts and stuff. That's common practice. It's done throughout the state police. If a mobile field force goes on a mission, they commonly share all of their stuff together and their information together, just to make sure that it's all done correctly.
Is that the reason you did what you did?
I just gave it to him as a go-by. I didn't mandate that he had to do it that way. I didn't require him to do it that way. I never told him that they must do it this way.
And of course, Major Williams didn't follow your time sheet at all as it relates to his hours, is that correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
He only claimed 8 hours a day.
Yes, sir.
Rodney, are you familiar with the booklet prepared for captains in part by Colonel Reeves?
Yes, sir, I am.
There's a section on just causes.
There is, yes, sir.
One of the sections talks about, was the investigation fair? Do you believe that the way the investigation progressed, and particularly the way it started after Colonel Edmondson announced the investigation, was fair to you?
I think when you look at due process and what it talks about is that the 7 criteria have to be met. That when you look at fairness, when you look at the fact that Edmondson orders an investigation on the 18th, tells us that we're going to be disciplined basically in the article. Then on the 20th we get questioned, and the questions are very, very interrogative in nature and very accusatory. And we're not read our rights, and we're not afforded an attorney. I think all of that plays into not being a fair investigation. And then when you tell what happened, and you tell the story. And they learn of, hey, maybe you should have took the most direct route because that's not in the policy state travel guide. Maybe your wife should have signed a waiver form because that's not in the state travel guide. And they learn all this on the 20th, and then they come around and start asking questions again on the 21st, knowing of potential policy violations, and still don't read you your rights, still don't afford you an attorney, not taking into account the police officer's Bill of Rights, not taking into account many of the State Police Commission rules. I think when you look at the totality of everything, the fact that it's brought to a colonel's attention and he refuses to even worry about that part of it is some concern for fairness for a lot of people.
We're talking about 9 months?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. So when an investigation, or when they know of an investigation, and in my letter they said in November they knew of, when your reimbursement documents were reviewed prior to release pursuant to a public records request received in November of 2016, questions arose regarding the amounts you claimed for reimbursement for meals.
Does the State Police Commission rules require that they start an investigation in any particular time if there's no complaint, no formal complaint filed?
It says it has to be done within 14 days of their knowledge.
Now, they charged you in this letter, not only did the public records request occur, but it says very specifically in this letter that there were questions that arose regarding your claim reimbursement. They ultimately investigated you about claim reimbursement, right?
Yes, sir.
Did they do it within 14 days when they first learned of the issue?
No, sir.
Would you read Rule 12.18B?
Mr. Falcon, we're real familiar with those rules and how to count.
I hope so. Thank you, sir.
I mean, you're free to ask whatever question you think you need to ask. I just want to let you know
Did they start an investigation in 14 days of learning of the issue?
No, sir, they didn't. And I think in January of 2017, they told us to recorrect them, and we did that. And apparently they were still wrong, and we didn't get...
Oh, the contention is they're still wrong.
That's correct. And we didn't get or no investigation was started then either.
On February 20th, were you ordered by either Major Flincham or Captain McClendon to answer any questions?
So there you go with the order thing again.
Well,
According to policy and procedure, there's a specific guideline in there that says that we shall cooperate with any investigation. Shall. Have to. We have to.
Did they tell you at that point that there was an investigation?
It's my understanding that there was from the newspaper article that we were going to be under investigation.
But I asked you, did they tell you that there was an investigation?
No, I knew they was there to ask questions about it.
Did they ever tell you that there would be a penalty for failing to answer any of the questions?
No, ma'am, they did not.
Okay.
I already knew that, though, that there would be. That's what the policy says.
But you're assuming they were conducting an investigation at that time,
They
correct?
were conducting an investigation at that time.
That's your assumption. Essentially, you didn't know how to respond. Did they ask you to tell them anything other than the truth?
The way they asked the question was like they were trying to ask questions as if Colonel Edmondson would have asked them or directed them that these are the type of questions we want to know to determine whether or not, basically to cover him, it seemed like, did anybody order you to go to Las Vegas? Well, Colonel Edmondson knew very well where we were the whole time. He called me while I was in Las Vegas, asked me where I was staying at. After we finished the trip and we got down to San Diego, we had dinner that night. The trip was talked about. He asked again. He said the Palazzo was his favorite hotel. It was all discussed and it was all known and it was all talked about. So when you ask the question, did anyone order you to go to Las Vegas? It seems that no one directly ordered me to do that, but he definitely knew that we did that. So that kind of line of questioning just seemed very evasive or very like, this was it for us. We were the ones that were going to have to. And mind you that you have to take into consideration, I just watched my colonel lie basically saying that he didn't know that we went on this trip.
But would you agree that in state police, there's a difference between an order to do something and a suggestion to do something?
I don't know if there's a suggestion that ever comes out of the colonel's mouth. He can say he suggested this or he suggested that.
Is there a
That's fine.
penalty for not complying with an order?
I think there's a penalty for not complying with anything in the long term, yes, if that's what you're talking about.
I specifically asked an order, a
If you're
direct
giving a
order.
direct order, there's a penalty for not obeying a direct order. It would be insubordination.
And I guess my question is, you said you felt that they would be trying to put it on you. If the whole trip was open, there was nothing to conceal, what would be put on you? What was your concern that would be put on you?
That's what I was most concerned with. I didn't know where they were going with all of this or what they were doing. I just knew that the questions I would be asked were very directed towards that.
Is it possible they were just trying to figure out what had happened, where the trip had taken you, and what went on?
I think knowing that a state police colonel was not being 100% truthful with the media caused alarm to everybody that's being questioned.
Sergeant Hyatt, we had heard testimony about the route that was taken, the northern route. So just to be clear, was that your decision to take that route, or are you still maintaining you were ordered by Colonel Edmondson to take that route?
I don't think I ever said I was ordered to take a route by Colonel Edmondson. And just to clarify on the order, I don't think in 20-something years of state police, I don't think anybody's ever told me, I order you to do this, I order you to do that. It's just a general conversation that they've had. So in talking to Colonel Edmondson that morning, that was the general conversation that was had. That's what he approved and authorized.
Okay, so it was finally it was your decision to take that route, right?
Objection argumentative.
Well, we're trying to figure out how the route was determined. I know Colonel Edmondson said it was suggested, it was discussed, but the ultimate decision of how to travel there, we're trying to find out whose decision that was.
He can answer the question of whose decision it was.
So when I had that conversation with Colonel Edmondson that morning, he obviously said, do not take I-10, and then that route was discussed, and he agreed that that route was okay to do that. That in the conversation that we had with him, that was his determination that everything he was approved to be on that route. That was my understanding of our conversation.
You said you were getting instructions. What instructions were you getting? Did they instruct you to go to the Grand Canyon or to go to Las Vegas?
Just that morning,
And they instructed you to do that?
that was the route that was authorized and approved by Colonel Edmondson, yes ma'am.
And Edmondson specifically said, go to Grand Canyon and go to Las Vegas. Is that what you're saying?
Ma'am, if you're asking, did Colonel Edmondson say, you will go to the Grand Canyon, you will go to Las Vegas? And no, he did not say that.
Okay.
Travel beyond regular work hours to and from a non-mandatory conference, convention, seminar, workshop, training, course, or related activity elected by the employee shall not be designated as hours worked for which compensation is required or permitted.
Thank you.
Mr. Gerard questioned you about the ethics committee. Was the ethics committee investigation about whether you got money from the government that you were not entitled to for lunches, overtime, travel?
That's what the investigation concluded. It included pretty much everything that I was charged with state police.
Okay. So although you weren't charged with a specific violation of the ethics statute by the colonel, or by Colonel Reeves, or Colonel Noel in this matter, that was the scope of the Ethics Commission investigation, was it not?
That's correct. All of my timesheets, hotel lodging overages, the side trip itself to the Grand Canyon, to Las Vegas, all that was included into the ethics investigation.
We had, I wanted to clear up one other thing that I think I'm tired of thinking about it, but it's go to the conference and you need to drive. Was that a request, a directive, or were you saying, if you feel like it, you can do that?
It was asked to me if I wanted to go to the conference. I said, yes, if you have to go, you have to drive. You have to drive. If you go, you have to drive. I said, yes, sir.
Did you ever receive notification of the amount paid in error?
No, sir.
Nevertheless, you made a reimbursement, did you not?
Yes, sir, I did.
Were you ever notified of a discrepancy or method of recovery of funds that will be determined by the appointing authority?
No, sir.
Did they ever have to notify you what you had to do?
No, sir.
And finally, were you ever contacted by the Attorney General's office and enforcement or collection efforts instituted against you?
No, sir.
In fact, sir, did anybody ever complain or suggest that you should have reimbursed more?
No, sir.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
The officer's bill of rights seems to be a key element of this case, and the investigation was not conducted in a timely fashion. I just want to know from you, when you were questioned on February 20th and 21st, did you feel that your rights were being violated by Major Clinton and Captain Clinton?
I felt that we were being interrogated. I felt that that I knew we were entitled to certain rights. I wanted to do my best to cooperate with the investigation. Like I said before, I just had the Colonel of State Police go on air and basically say in the media that he had no idea about this trip. And we were trying to figure out what to exactly say and do during these things. So we were scared at that time. I was scared at that time. And I did the best I could to cooperate with the investigation during that time, knowing that there are certain things that should have been followed and should have been done.
During your testimony, you said something, correct me if I'm right, you felt that you were going to be a scapegoat for this Sandy anniversary, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So you did feel uncomfortable.
Yes,
Did
sir.
you say that to him during your interview on the 20th and 21st of February?
I'm just trying to make everybody happy at this point in time and hoping and praying that nothing bad comes to me by cooperating.
So you didn't voice any of that during the time of those two interviews, correct? That you were worried or scared that you were going to be the scapegoat? You didn't tell them that, no?
I told them something to the effect of I was worried, I was scared.
Okay. You sent an appeal letter to Colonel Reeves after you disciplined? Did you send Colonel Reeves a letter? an
Yes,
appeal
a response letter.
To a response to your discipline? During that appeal letter, did you mention anything about that you felt the investigation was unfair and that you were singled out and you felt like you were a scapegoat for this investigation?
No, during that appeal letter, that was just to answer, that's a legal letter just to answer the charges. Hopefully, in a meeting with him, that, all that would have been revealed and discussed, just as he admitted that they had told him in the beginning that they had issues with it.
Another question. During your trip, I know it was a long trip, and I know there's been some discussion about what route you should have took or shouldn't have took. Colonel Dupuy came testify, he told you that he would suggest you take the most direct route. Colonel Edmondson said, almost, you're implying that he said, don't take the I-10 route, which would have been the route that Dupuy suggested. So therefore, Colonel Edmondson, of course, is higher rank than Dupuy, so you felt necessary that you better take the northern route. Is that correct?
That is, in discussions with him, yes, I'm gonna go with what the Colonel says.
Do you feel that you earned that money that you returned to the state, the $1,300? Do you feel you personally deserve that money, that you worked for that money?
I feel that it was the right thing to do, to pay that money back based on the totality of the circumstances and what we've come to learn from this, and what we've come to know from this. Regardless of whether or not a colonel approves something, regardless of whether or not you keep in touch with him and he knows the whole route, it doesn't make it right. And I paid that money back because it was the right thing to do.
Would you earn that money if you were traveling, you were told to travel? If you were testifying that Colonel Edmondson told you to take that route and you traveled those hours, then you earned that money, so you should have been able to keep it, correct?
You did earn that money, yes.
Just like I believe Lieutenant Williams, major at the time, he claimed 8 hours. He could have claimed more, couldn't he? And he could have earned that time, is that correct?
That's correct.
So anytime you work or you earn, you should be able to keep that money. There's no reason to return that money if you actually earned that money, correct?
The things that we returned were for the things that were considered to be off-route. So if you look at what was considered to be off-route, it would have been about 300 miles. The distance it takes to drive 300 miles would have been the off-route things. The places you stayed would have been the off-route locations. The things you did, what is considered to be off-route, or what they considered to be off-route, was what was recompensated back.
You know policy and procedure. You just testified that you knew you were entitled to certain things. You were scared. You had heard certain things from Colonel Edmondson. With all that in mind, did you ever ask those that you were having the meeting with, for my age, did you ever ask them to stop, I want a lawyer?
No, I didn't want to rock a boat. I thought this was, Colonel Edmondson was ordering this. Colonel Edmondson had known. If I seemed like I was rocking a boat, if I seemed like I was going against Colonel Edmondson, I couldn't imagine what was going to happen then.
Did you ever specifically ask them if you were being investigated?
No, sir, I did not.
See, for me, it's just, I'm trying to wrap my head around this.
Yes, sir.
As articulate, well-studied, intelligent as you are. You've been in state police for how long? 20 years?
20 years.
It just seems to me that you knew the policy and procedure and what you were entitled to. As a matter of fact, you testified to it earlier. You knew what you were entitled to have, but you never stopped the process if you were worried or scared. And again, the same question for the following day on the 21st. You just testified that certainly by this time, your radar's up. You know that, or you feel that maybe something's not right here.
Yes, sir.
Okay, again, am I correct in saying you didn't stop the you didn't stop the meeting, you didn't ask for an attorney, you didn't ask specifically any of those kind of questions?
No, sir. It's a close balance between wanting to upset or rock the boat, or scream or cry foul, or cooperate and then roll the dice, and hopefully the best happens for you. That Edmondson just dies down. Edmondson knew he wasn't being forthright and truthful from the beginning. He's just trying to conduct an investigation and inquiry. We could be disciplined, we could not be disciplined, could get a slap on the wrist, could get demoted. I have no idea what's going on at the time. Most certainly, I did not ever think that it would rise to the level of demotion. By no means did I ever think that. That told them the truth and what kind of happened, because even they would ask me the question, did Edmondson know? And I said, you might want to ask me another question, because I knew he said he didn't. And then I answered it, because David McClendon said, there's 4 of y'all. Someone's going to say something, Rodney. And I said, well, yeah, he knew. He was on the phone. They overheard the conversations. I said, of course he knew. And he goes, okay. And I thought that would help somewhat in the overall event of what happened and what took place.
You could have made from the Grand Canyon, you could have made San Diego easily. Getting up late that morning and not leaving until 9 or 10 like you did Vegas the next day, you could have gotten into San Diego before dark, which would have given you plenty of time to rest, and you would have made your conference the next day. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So, like I said, personally, that's what I'm having the biggest challenge with. There was a conscious decision somewhere along the way to say, hey, if I'm going to make my conference that I'm scheduled to attend, not the other appellants, we need to go ahead and get up and leave for Arizona. Leave from Arizona this morning. We need to go ahead and drive straight into San Diego, and we'll be there. Get a night before, get everything squared away in our hotels, get up fresh in the morning, and go to my conference. So somewhere in there, a conscious decision was made, a bad one, in my opinion, that said, no, we're going to Vegas, which is only, how many hours was it from Grand Canyon to Vegas? 3 or 4 hours?
That's a little
Maybe, not
longer
that
than
long.
that, it seemed like.
It's 8 hours to San Diego from there. Let's say halfway. You know, so you're only driving for 4 hours that day,
Yes, sir.
which is the 3rd day.
Yes, sir.
You know, so I guess I'm trying to ask you to help me
I think
understand what your thought process were.
a lot of it is that because we had authorization from the colonel to stay there, that was one of the main locations that it was there. We knew that that's where we were going to go.
But you testified yourself that you had absolutely no state business to be doing in Las Vegas.
I don't think, if you look at anything along the route, I don't know if it's considered state business though, sir, I really don't.
Well, no, I mean, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. I think as you're driving, I think you're doing state business because you're trying to reach a final destination. What I'm trying to
In my
understand
mind,
is you drive straight from the Grand Canyon to San Diego, you're still doing state business.
Yes, sir.
8 hours, not even a long driving day with 4 people in the car that are driving 2 hours apiece. You get there, you're done.
So in my mind, the route as discussed by Edmondson was that route. So in my mind, that is our route. So, but let me back you up to that. When you look at the time that we drove to Amarillo, the time we had been up that day, and then we get up and we go to the Grand Canyon.
Which was a personal choice again,
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir. By all means, but in that directional route or whatever.
but that's not in the directional route. With all due respect, you're way off the directional route
Yes,
even
sir.
by the map. So you're making a conscious decision that I'm gonna add time and fatigue to
Yes.
the trip. So that's not something you can push back onto the state or even the colonel, in my opinion. Unless you show me something that says I order you to go to the Grand Canyon.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. And I'll say this, don't get me wrong, Colonel Edmondson didn't do you guys any favors. I believe he directed you to take the northern route, I believe he directed you to do a lot of things on here. There's also personal responsibility, you know, and, that we have to take into account too. And I'm holding the Colonel responsible for a lot of this mess.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I think about that every day. So-
Yes, sir.
And that the things that we should have done better and the things that we could do better.
Okay.
Go up to the question that you asked, 'cause I don't think I heard an answer to the question. Why not? Why didn't you leave the Grand Canyon and go straight to San Diego?
Poor decision making, sir. The bottom line, we were tired and we were looking for a place, and to be quite honest with you, they never seen the Grand Canyon, I never seen the Grand Canyon. And wanted to see it, and when we left there that day, we should have. We should have done a lot of things that I wish we would have done to this day. And if I could take a lot of it back, I would. But what happened, happened. I can't change that.
You stopped in Las Vegas,
Yes, sir.
stayed up rather late in Las Vegas. And I understand that's not what's at issue, it's not part of your discipline, but it's part of the question I'm asking you.
Yes, sir.
Stayed up late the night in Las Vegas, right?
I did, not the rest of the group.
You did.
Yes, sir.
And you got a late start the next day, even though the rest of the group didn't, but you had a conference to get to.
Yes, sir.